There we go.
Excellent. Well, we'll start at the top again. Thank you for taking a minute out. It's great to meet you. I'm looking forward to getting into your work and your life.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You bet. So before we get into your work as an author and CEO and everything that you're doing, I want to know, 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, we were trying to figure out this pandemic. And I know we're getting fatigued talking about it, that it was such a big deal for all of us in so many ways. So how did you make it through that time period, and how did it change the way that you do things now?
That's a really interesting question. So first of all, prior to the pandemic, I worked from home and I have four kids.
Yeah.
And when everyone came home to be homeschooled, that motivated me to get an office outside of my home. So where everybody else was moving home to work, I actually rented the office space that I'm in now, which is in a like an entrepreneurial hub. So you're in a building with a whole bunch of other entrepreneurs, but you have your own office space. And so like I'm once you get in the building, I'm very isolated. So I could come in and not be around other people and that kind of thing. So everybody else, yeah, everybody else went home. I was like, because these kids, you would I literally put a sign on the door that said, unless you are bleeding or someone is dying, do not knock on this door because I couldn't get anything done. And just every 5 minutes, mom, mom. And so it changed that. And that actually was a really good move for my business. I needed to get out of the house. It's allowed me to grow. It's done a lot of things like that. And then the other thing for me that came out of the pandemic was I took the time to get a guardianship certification. So I'm a nationally certified guardian, and that has also allowed me to grow my care management business in a new direction. And so kind of gave me a path. And I'm not sure if I would have taken the time to do that if I hadn't just kind of been trapped inside a little bit to go, okay, I can take the time to do the work and study for this test and get all the things done. So yeah, so that it ultimately benefited me in my business overall.
So let's get to the heart and soul right now in 2024 of what you do on a daily basis for a living. And I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. And one of the curious kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
That's so hard. So I help your mom and dad when they are trying to figure out how to best take care of grandma and grandpa. That's if I was explaining it to a third grader, that is what I would say. So
Gotcha.
like when grandma and grandpa need help and mom and dad don't know what to do, they call me.
Okay. So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
A teacher. I wanted to be a teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher. And I do still teach part-time at a university. But that was my mom's a teacher, my aunt's a teacher, my grandfather was a teacher, everybody's a teacher. I got a lot of those, and that was what I wanted to do.
So take me back to your childhood, and what were some of the other foundational elements that have helped you evolve into your career today? How did that happen?
Sure. So the big one in terms of my career was that we lived right next door to my grandparents and to my mom's parents. And so I had a very close relationship with them growing up. And when my grandfather passed away, my mom and her sister got thrown what felt like virtually overnight into becoming a caregiver for my grandmother because my grandfather had done such a good job of taking care of her that they did not realize that she had dementia, that her dementia had progressed. They knew she had some memory problems and was forgetful, but they had no idea that she really couldn't be left alone at all until after he passed away. And so they went from we have two parents to we have one parent and she needs 24/7 care.
Yeah.
She can't be left to her own devices. So they went through that caregiving journey. He passed away when I was in the eighth grade. My grandmother didn't pass away until I was a junior in college. And over the course of those years, they had to find caregivers. She ended up in the hospital. They needed to find placement in a facility. They made mistakes. They made mistakes along the way. They were very stressed. And I just remember thinking, why isn't there somebody who helps you with this? Right? Why isn't there somebody who like guides you down this path and like tells you these are the options and this is what you can afford and the different things? And there just wasn't, especially not at that time. And so I went on to school, I went on to graduate school. I've got a PhD in developmental psychology. My specialty is adulthood and aging. And I have said all along, there's supposed to be somebody who helps you with that. And back in 2012, I finally looked at my husband and said, if I'm ever going to start that business that I keep talking about, that's supposed to help people navigate this, it's only gotten more complicated over the years. So now's the time. And that's what I did.
So, who's been kind of that pillar of strength for you, hero, inspiration in your work and in your life?
Pillar of strength. I would probably say my mom,
Yeah.
just in the sense that, like I watched her go through that journey with her own parents while also working full time and raising kids. And I've watched her, she worked for 30 years as a middle school English and social studies teacher. I mean, God bless her that she did that. Um, and then she retired, and then she went back and got a certification in teaching English as a second language. And so then she went to work for several years, just part time as teaching kids who were newcomers to the US English as their second language in school. And yeah, I mean, she's always been doing stuff and she's always had a lot on her plate and she just keeps going.
So, when you talk about, guardianship and taking care of the grandparents of the world, we've historically as humans had this weird relationship with age where they're
Mhm.
not extolled for what they're worth and for the time on the planet that they've lived. Is that kind of been a part of you getting into this line of work to kind of, you know, pay credence to this group of people that tend to get overlooked and overshadowed?
So one of the things, I mean, I think I've always had an appreciation for older people. Otherwise, I would have never gotten into this field. Um, but one of the things that work in this is going to sound incongruous, but so I work in this kind of stressful field where because people don't typically call me. I get a few phone calls where people are like, we want to plan ahead and we want to think, into the future about what our options are going to be. Most of my phone calls are everything was fine until it wasn't. Something has happened and now the what has hit the fan and we are in a panic and we're upset and we need to know everything there is to know about senior healthcare, uh, and we need to know it like yesterday.
Yeah.
That's a more typical phone call. But what my work has shown me over the years is that people who have a positive outlook on aging, the people who are looking forward to it and having a good time, right, as they age, they plan. They have conversations with their loved ones about this is what I want as I grow older, or and this is how we're going to pay for it, or here's my goals and dreams for, my older adulthood, my future, whatever it is. And they have a much better experience than the people who are trying to deny their aging, who are trying to um, basically bury their heads in the sand and say, I'm just going to die warm in my bed and nothing bad is ever going to happen to me. And we don't need to talk about that stuff, right? They're not going to do a will. They're not going to do a power of attorney. They're not going to do anything. And that kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because when you are so afraid of it and you don't do any planning and you don't do any preparing and you don't talk about these things with your family, well, then when the crisis happens and the what hits the fan, um, it really does go quite poorly because you didn't plan and you didn't prepare and you just kind of denied that any of this was happening. So I'm quite passionate about trying to get people to look forward to their own older adulthood because there is so much to look forward to. I mean, there's studies on this. If you look at happiness, there's this thing called the U curve of happiness, and people report the highest levels of happiness in their 60s and 70s.
Yeah,
I mean, it's, we think, oh, you're going to get older and you're going to be so sad and depressed. And no, no. And there's just, especially today when we are healthier in our older adulthood than we've probably ever been previously, then there's so much for people to look forward to doing. You hear about it's like a second adulthood
yeah.
in a lot of ways because you've got a lot of opportunity to do stuff that you've always wanted to do during those years. So why not look forward to it?
Absolutely. So, what is your motivation every day to wake up to do this work? You obviously have to give a lot. You're dealing with heavy things. You're helping people, but you also have to evolve as a human being. What is that
Hmm.
collective energy for you every day to wake up and do this?
You know, I think this is as much about my own journey as it is everyone else's. I mean, I um obviously have had a passion for working with older adults basically my whole life, but I'm going to be 50 next year. And we all kind of have that moment where we wake up and we go, "Oh crap, this aging thing is happening to me too. It
Yep.
doesn't just happen to everybody else." And I think if I want older adults to be taken more seriously, to be respected, for them to have a good experience as they grow older. If I want that for myself as I grow older, I have to care about it now.
Yeah.
I have to care about it when I'm in middle age. I really should care about it even when I'm a young adult, but it might be hard to get them to convince them that that's true because they still believe they're never going to age, right? Like that's not applying to them yet. But it is as much for me about I want to look forward to this, right? Like I want to know that there are still things in the future for me that are exciting and that I'm going to enjoy and that I'm going to achieve and that kind of stuff. So I think it's as much about that as anything else.
So, if you could meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, spend a little time with them, who would that be?
And one person on the planet, who would it be? Probably Brene Brown or Glennon Doyle.
Okay.
One of the two of them because I think they've both done really interesting personal development work, and I feel like this is the path I'm going down is in a very similar vein. um you know so yeah, I would love to have coffee with either one of them. I think I could have some really interesting conversations.
So let's depart our age now and beyond and go back to youth. You have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you. You can give that young, youthful version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained along the way. What advice would you impart, and would that version of you listen?
I'm sure she wouldn't listen
Yeah,
because at 18 you think you know
you know
everything.
everything.
You know everything. um I think I was always a very high anxiety student. If I was the kid that if I was getting a B in the class, I would stay after because I needed to know what was wrong. Why wasn't I getting the A? That sort of thing. I think I would probably tell myself to relax, right? Like not that it's gonna be fine. Um, Relax about the school and the grades and maybe go have a little more fun
Yeah.
than I actually did.
So in our society, we see a lot of older people out there that are doing really good work. They hold on to their youth and their playfulness, like Helen Moran and all these others. Who do you admire the most that's aged well and that's held their strength and dexterity?
So she's passed away now, but I think my icon is Betty White.
Yeah.
Because she was funny And even in her older adult years, had this kind of youthful energy around her.
Yep.
And just if I could emulate anyone as I grow older, I think that's, who I'd want to be. Absolutely.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Let go or hold it lightly.
There you go. I get it. I get it. What are you the proudest of everything that you've achieved and evolved into in your life at this point? What are you the proudest of?
So I'm really proud that I started a company and that here, 12 years later, it's still here. We still and that we're doing important and good work. I'm really proud that I wrote a book, um, because that is something I talked about doing, and I think a lot of people talk about doing, but I talked about doing for a lot of years, and then finally sat down and was like, okay, no, really, we're gonna do this, and got it done. Once I sat down and started on it, I had it out within a year. So, like, come on, we gotta get this thing done. So
Absolutely.
those two things, and then I mean, and then of course, your kids and your family
Oh,
and
yeah.
and those things too. I think that's everyone's answer. And I should say most of the time, I'm really proud of them.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm I'm like, no, those aren't mine. No, I'm not gonna claim that
Yeah.
teenage boy right now. Thank you very
Yep.
much.
Absolutely. So at the end of the day, everyone out there has a perception of you. You have all these pockets of people in your life,
Hmm.
family, friends, readers, clients, everyone, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I would say I'm someone who's very responsible. Whatever my obligations are, um, I'm going to get those done. And if I don't, if you and I have a meeting and I don't show up, or I'm late, something's wrong, right? Like, something's wrong. So I'm responsible, but also most days pretty funny, right? Have in terms of being able to take we do very serious work. We are often dealing with families when they are really upset and very stressed out. But the ability to bring humor or lightheartedness to that, even when it is a very serious situation, I think is one of my strengths. Um, because we're trying to calm you down, get you, help you see the big picture, those sorts of things, and that takes a certain I want to say levity, but it takes a certain ability to bring calm to the situation when there's not a lot of calm. And humor can help with that a lot. If you can find little pockets of joy or humor in those situations, that can really help families take a breath and be ready to move forward in what is a difficult situation.
So speaking of moving forward, if anyone out there wants to hire you, pick up your book, learn more about you, reach out any of the good business, where do they go?
They go to CorinneAuman.com. So it's just my name. And there you can, there's links to the book. There's links to other information about me, all my social media, ways to reach out.
Wonderful, Corinne. This has been great. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.